When my son Richard pressured me to sign over my modest savings as a wedding gift to help secure our future together with his business partner Harold, he had no idea he was manipulating Margaret Katherine Whitmore, the anonymous founder and CEO of Whitmore Legal Consortium, a $340 million law firm empire that owns the very courthouse where our wedding was taking place, employs the judge who would perform the ceremony, and could transform his greedy scheme into the most expensive lesson about elder exploitation and family. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The carefully orchestrated wedding ceremony that Richard had planned for the historic Catherine's Chapel last Saturday afternoon, complete with a rushed 3-week engagement, a groom I'd met only twice, and urgent paperwork requiring my immediate signature on joint financial accounts, represented the culmination of 18 months of systematic elder manipulation and financial positioning that would have transferred my entire life savings, my modest Maplewood home, and my carefully guarded independence to a son who viewed my advancing age as an opportunity for wealth extraction rather than a time deserving respect, dignity, and family protection. The gray wool dress from Sears that I wore to our engagement dinner at Olive Garden last month, a conservative high-necked outfit, paired with sensible walking shoes from Payless and my late husband's simple gold wedding band that I still wore as a symbol of enduring loyalty, created exactly the visual impression that Richard and Harold expected from a grieving elderly widow, whose Social Security payment and William's modest railroad pension required careful budgeting for basic living expenses in my small 2-bedroom ranch house on Elm Street, where the monthly mortgage payments and utility bills consumed most of my apparent income, while leaving little discretionary spending for luxury experiences or sophisticated financial planning. The appearance that I had carefully cultivated since William's funeral service 26 months ago perfectly reinforced every stereotype about elderly women who depend on fixed incomes and struggle with the complex financial decisions that younger generations assume are beyond their comprehension. My daily routine of clipping grocery coupons, shopping for marked-down produce at Save Mart, and carefully tracking expenses in a spiral notebook created the perfect evidence for Richard's assumptions about my financial limitations and cognitive capability, while my frequent visits to the local bank to make small deposits and withdraw modest amounts for weekly expenses supported his belief that my assets were limited to checking account balances and a small savings fund that William had established for our retirement years. The technology limitation that I displayed during family visits provided crucial evidence of generational gaps and learning challenges that Richard interpreted as cognitive decline and financial vulnerability, rather than strategic performance designed to maintain operational security and family perception management. When Richard attempted to help me with online banking or explained smartphone applications, I responded with appropriate confusion and hesitation, asking repeated questions about security concerns and expressing preference for traditional paper statements and in-person banking assistance that elderly adults depend on for guidance with complex financial systems and investment coordination. The prescription medication routine characterized my bathroom counter and kitchen table provided additional evidence of my supposed health constraints and fixed income limitations that Richard treated as normal aging processes rather than strategic performance designed to maintain the appearance of elderly vulnerability and financial dependence. The weekly pill organizer with its 7 compartments, each carefully filled with generic medications for blood pressure, arthritis, and cholesterol management, sat prominently next to Medicare paperwork and pharmacy receipts that demonstrated careful attention to healthcare costs and prescription expense management. The social isolation that had characterized my lifestyle since William's death provided Richard with comprehensive evidence of loneliness and emotional vulnerability that made his matchmaking scheme appear like genuine family concern, rather than systematic elder exploitation designed to gain access to assets he had never bothered to investigate or understand. My absence from social media, limited participation in community activity, and apparent dependence on Richard for assistance with basic errands created the perfect foundation for his belief that I needed male companionship and financial guidance to navigate the complex challenges of elderly independence. The modest home environment that I maintained in my small Maplewood residence perfectly supported every assumption about elderly financial constraints and simple living requirements. The dated furniture from the 1990s, the basic television and radio entertainment system, and the careful maintenance of William's personal belongings created exactly the kind of modest widow's household that adult children expect when elderly parents live on fixed incomes and depend on careful budgeting to maintain their independence, while avoiding the expensive senior living facilities that represent their greatest fear about aging and financial security. The grocery shopping routine that Richard occasionally observed during his monthly visits provided systematic evidence of careful expense management and budget limitations that excluded consideration of luxury purchases or sophisticated dietary preferences. My systematic use of store discount cards, my attention to sale prices and weekly specials, and my preference for generic brands over name brand products demonstrated exactly the kind of financial consciousness that adult children expect from elderly parents who depend on Social Security payments and modest pensions to cover basic living expenses. The financial planning discussions Richard had been initiating with increasing frequency throughout the past year revealed his systematic preparation for managing my elderly care obligations while positioning himself for inheritance, coordination, and asset management that served his convenience rather than my actual needs, preferences. The conversations about appropriate financial planning for seniors, potential reverse mortgage options for elderly homeowners, and simplified asset management that doesn't overwhelm aging coordination capabilities consistently treated my supposed limitations as problems requiring his oversight rather than recognizing the sophisticated legal expertise that had been operating beneath his assumptions about maternal simplicity and retirement lifestyle constraints. The pressure campaign that Richard had been conducting since William's death began subtly with helpful suggestions about my inability to manage finances alone, escalated through concerned recommendations about the benefits of remarriage for elderly women, and culminated in his introduction. Harold Brennan, a 68-year-old widower, whose failing auto repair business and mounting debts created the perfect partnership for a scheme that treated my supposed loneliness and vulnerability as exploitable weaknesses, rather than recognizing the sharp legal mind and business acumen that had carefully concealed beneath my grieving widow persona. The initial conversations about my need for companionship began approximately 14 months after William's funeral, when Richard started suggesting that isolation isn't healthy for seniors and that many elderly women find great happiness in second marriages that provide emotional support and practical assistance with daily living challenges. His systematic introduction of these themes during our weekly phone calls and monthly visits revealed careful preparation for psychological manipulation that exploited natural grief responses while positioning remarriage as practical necessity rather than personal choice. The introduction of Harold Brennan as a potential romantic interest occurred through what Richard presented as a coincidental meeting at the local hardware store, where Harold allegedly approached me for advice about paint colors, while Richard conveniently stepped away to examine power tools. The staged encounter that followed, Harold's apparent interest in my garden, his compliments about my home maintenance skills, and his suggestion that we continue our conversation over coffee represented sophisticated manipulation designed to create the impression of organic romantic development, rather than calculated financial targeting. The courtship coordination that Richard orchestrated over the following months included systematic encouragement of Harold's visits, enthusiastic support for their growing friendship, and strategic suggestions about the benefits of companionship for elderly individuals who might otherwise struggle with isolation and depression. Richard's role as enthusiastic matchmaker provided perfect cover for systematic elder grooming, while positioning himself as loving son who prioritized his mother's happiness and emotional well-being above convenience or financial consideration. The financial pressure that began appearing in Harold's conversations, approximately 6 weeks into our courtship, revealed the underlying purpose of Richard's matchmaking efforts. Harold's casual mentions of business challenges, his references to opportunities that required modest investment, and his suggestions about the benefits of combining financial resources for retired couples provided early warning indicators of systematic exploitation while maintaining the appearance of romantic consideration and practical partnership planning. The marriage proposal that Harold presented 2 months after our first meeting included immediate pressure for wedding planning and systematic urgency about finalizing our legal and financial coordination before complications could interfere with our happiness. The timeline that compressed traditional engagement periods into a 3-week coordination schedule created artificial urgency while preventing careful consideration of legal implications and financial consequences that might have revealed the systematic exploitation that Richard and Harold had planned. The wedding planning process that Richard assumed complete control over included systematic selection of affordable venues, minimal guest coordination, and urgent paperwork requirements that positioned immediate asset consolidation as romantic gesture rather than systematic financial manipulation. The venue selection that excluded my preferences, the guest list that minimized witnesses who might question the rushed timeline, and the legal documentation that required immediate signature created perfect conditions for elder exploitation while maintaining the appearance of family celebration and romantic fulfillment. The financial documentation that Harold and Richard presented for my signature during our wedding planning meetings included joint account establishment, power of attorney arrangement, and property transfer agreements that would have provided immediate access to assets while eliminating my independent financial control and legal authority. The paperwork that they presented as standard marriage procedures actually represented comprehensive wealth transfer mechanisms designed to circumvent inheritance protections while maintaining the appearance of legitimate spousal financial coordination. The pressure tactics that Richard employed when I expressed hesitation about signing financial documents included emotional manipulation about my trust issues, practical arguments about the benefits of simplified financial management for elderly couples, and systematic urgency about completing paperwork before our wedding date. His insistence that marriage requires financial transparency and shared responsibility, combined with Harold's expressions of hurt feelings about my lack of commitment, created psychological pressure designed to overcome reasonable caution, while positioning resistance as relationship failure rather than prudent financial protection. The systematic elder exploitation that characterized Richard and Harold's coordination included comprehensive planning for post-marriage asset management, systematic preparation for establishing legal authority over my daily decisions, and strategic positioning for eventual institutional care placement that would have transferred remaining assets while eliminating their ongoing responsibility for my welfare and dignity. The conversations that I overheard between them about appropriate senior living facilities and streamlined financial management revealed their ultimate intentions, while confirming that my apparent vulnerability had been successfully exploited. What Richard never suspected was that his helpless mother had spent 47 years building one of the most powerful legal empires in the Pacific Northwest, maintaining complete anonymity through carefully structured corporate entities and professional networks, while accumulating sufficient wealth and legal authority to crush any scheme that threatened elderly dignity or family loyalty. The Whitmore Legal Consortium that I had founded in 1977 as a small family law practice had grown into a $340 million empire that included 12 regional offices, over 200 staff attorneys, and exclusive contracts with major corporations, government agencies, and cultural institutions throughout Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. The sophisticated legal infrastructure that I controlled through carefully maintained anonymity included comprehensive expertise in elder law, financial exploitation prevention, marriage fraud detection, and systematic justice delivery that protected vulnerable populations, while providing immediate consequence coordination for individuals who exploited elderly trust and family authority. The network of investigators, forensic accountants, and legal specialists that operated under Whitmore Legal Consortium authority provided comprehensive protection services while maintaining complete discretion and operational security, that enabled accurate assessment of threats without compromising individual privacy or family relationships. The professional reputation that I had established through 4 decades of legal excellence and ethical leadership provided immediate access to judicial cooperation, law enforcement coordination, regulatory authority that could address elder exploitation with unprecedented speed and comprehensive consequence delivery. The relationships that I maintained with superior court judges, district attorneys, and federal prosecutors throughout the Pacific Northwest created systematic support networks for elderly protection, while ensuring that financial predators faced immediate and devastating consequences for their exploitation scheme. The wedding day coordination that would provide Richard and Harold with the most expensive lesson about elder exploitation and family betrayal that any manipulative relatives had ever received was approaching with systematic inevitability, as their comfortable assumptions about maternal vulnerability and legal ignorance would soon collide with the reality of comprehensive legal authority and protective justice that had been carefully concealed beneath their target's grieving widow persona. The modest living arrangements that maintained in my small 2-bedroom ranch house at 1847 Elm Street in Maplewood created exactly the visual evidence that Richard and Harold needed to support their assumptions about elderly financial limitations and simple lifestyle requirements that excluded sophisticated asset management or complex investment coordination. The dated beige carpeting that had been installed in 19 and the carefully maintained but obviously aging furniture throughout the house provided systematic proof of careful budget management and the kind of practical living choices that adult children expect from elderly parents who depend on fixed incomes to maintain their independence. The deliberately modest decorating choices that characterized every room in my home included discount store artwork, basic window treatments from Walmart, and the kind of practical household items that reinforced assumptions about limited discretionary spending and simple aesthetic preference. The family photographs displayed throughout the living room showed decades of middle-class family life, Richard's graduation from community college, family vacations to state parks, and holiday celebrations that emphasized practical gifts and homemade meals, rather than expensive experiences or luxury coordination that might suggest hidden financial resources. The basic technology setup that dominated my living room included a television, a simple cable package with basic channels, and the absence of sophisticated entertainment systems or smart home technology that might indicate comfort with complex electronics or premium service subscriptions. The landline telephone that remained my primary communication method, combined with my apparent unfamiliarity with smartphones and internet services, provided perfect evidence of generational technology gaps and learning limitations that Richard interpreted as cognitive decline rather than strategic performance. The carefully curated wardrobe that filled my bedroom closet consisted entirely of practical clothing from discount retailers, polyester blouses from JCPenney, comfortable slacks from Kohl's, and sensible shoes that prioritized comfort over style. The absence of designer labels, expensive jewelry, or sophisticated accessories created systematic evidence of budget consciousness and simple taste preferences that excluded consideration of luxury purchases or fashion sophistication that might suggest access to substantial discretionary income. The basic financial management system that I displayed throughout my home included coupon organizers, handwritten budget notebooks, and the kind of careful expense tracking that Richard expected from elderly individuals who struggled with complex financial decisions and depended on simple record-keeping methods to manage their limited resources. The checkbook register that I maintained with careful attention to small transactions, the envelope system for organizing monthly bills, and the systematic attention to grocery store sales and discount opportunities provided comprehensive evidence of financial constraint and practical money management. The prescription medication coordination that characterized my daily routine included generic medications, stored in basic weekly pill organizers, Medicare paperwork carefully filed in manila folders, and the kind of healthcare expense management that demonstrated careful attention to medical costs and insurance coordination. The pharmacy discount cards, the systematic comparison shopping for prescription prices, and my apparent confusion about insurance coverage details provided additional evidence of fixed income limitations and the complex healthcare navigation challenges that many elderly individuals face. The transportation arrangements that defined my apparent mobility limitations included an aging 2008 Honda Civic with basic features, careful attention to gas prices and maintenance costs, and systematic avoidance of unnecessary driving that might strain my limited transportation budget. The bus schedules that I maintained for backup transportation, my apparent anxiety about driving in unfamiliar areas, and my dependence on Richard for assistance with complex errands created perfect evidence of elderly independence challenges and practical mobility constraints. The grocery shopping coordination that Richard occasionally observed during his visits provided systematic documentation of careful expense management and budget limitations that excluded consideration of premium food products or sophisticated dietary preference. My systematic use of store loyalty cards, my attention to weekly sales advertisements, and my preference for generic brands over name brand products demonstrated exactly the kind of financial consciousness that adult children expect from elderly parents who depend on fixed incomes to cover basic nutritional needs. The basic home maintenance approach that characterized my property management included careful attention to minor repairs, systematic prevention of expensive maintenance issues, and the kind of practical property care that demonstrated limited resources for professional services or luxury improvement. The garden areas that I maintained myself, the simple landscaping choices that minimized maintenance costs, and my apparent inability to afford professional lawn care or major home improvements provided additional evidence of budget constraints and practical living priorities. The social activities that defined my apparent retirement lifestyle included free community events, senior center programs that offered low-cost meals and basic entertainment, and the kind of simple social coordination that excluded expensive restaurants, cultural events, or travel experiences that might suggest access to discretionary spending. My participation in church activities that emphasized fellowship over financial contribution, my preference for home-based entertainment when hosting visits, and my apparent isolation from sophisticated social networks provided systematic evidence of limited social capital and simple lifestyle preferences. The banking routine that I maintained for Richard's observation included regular visits to the local branch for basic transactions, careful attention to account balance management, and the kind of simple financial coordination that demonstrated limited assets and practical money management, rather than sophisticated investment knowledge or complex financial plans. The savings account statements that I left visible during his visits showed modest balances and careful accumulation of small amounts over time, while my apparent confusion about investment options and retirement planning created perfect evidence of financial limitation and planning challenge. The utility management approach that characterized my household expenses included careful attention to energy costs, systematic efforts to minimize monthly bills through conservative usage pattern, and the kind of practical expense management that demonstrated limited discretionary income for comfortable living standards. The programmable thermostat that I used to minimize heating and cooling costs, the energy-efficient light bulbs throughout the house, and my apparent concern about utility rate increases provided additional evidence of budget consciousness and fixed income limitation. The healthcare coordination that defined my apparent medical needs included basic insurance coverage, careful attention to co-payment costs, and the kind of practical medical management that demonstrated limited resources for premium healthcare services or sophisticated medical coordination. My systematic comparison of prescription costs, my apparent anxiety about expensive medical procedures, and my dependence on Medicare coverage for basic healthcare needs provided comprehensive evidence of elderly healthcare challenges and financial constraints. The entertainment choices that characterized my daily routine included basic cable television programming, library books, rather than purchased reading materials, and free community activities, rather than expensive cultural experiences or sophisticated entertainment coordination. The absence of premium streaming services, expensive hobby equipment, or luxury leisure activities created systematic evidence of simple taste preferences and budget limitations that excluded consideration of sophisticated entertainment options. The clothing maintenance routine that I displayed during family visits included careful attention to extending garment life, systematic repair of minor damage, and the kind of practical wardrobe management that demonstrated limited resources for regular clothing replacement or fashion coordination. The sewing supplies that I maintained for basic alterations, my apparent preference for comfortable over stylish clothing choices, and my systematic avoidance of expensive shopping trips provided additional evidence of budget consciousness and practical lifestyle priority. The food preparation approach that characterized my daily meals included careful attention to food costs, systematic meal planning that minimized weight, and the kind of practical nutrition management that demonstrated limited resources for expensive dining experiences or sophisticated culinary coordination. The bulk purchasing strategies that I employed for non-perishable items, my systematic use of leftovers and meal preparation techniques that minimized food costs, and my apparent preference for simple home cooking over restaurant dining, provided comprehensive evidence of budget limitations and practical dietary management. The communication limitations that I displayed during family interactions included apparent difficulty with modern technology, systematic confusion about social media platforms, and the kind of generational communication gaps that Richard interpreted as cognitive decline rather than strategic technology avoidance. My preference for traditional phone calls over text messaging, my apparent inability to navigate internet services, and my systematic avoidance of online coordination created perfect evidence of elderly technology challenges and learning limitations. The financial planning confusion that I demonstrated during conversations about retirement security included apparent anxiety about future expenses, systematic concern about healthcare costs, and the kind of elderly financial worries that Richard interpreted as evidence of limited resources and planning capability rather than strategic performance, designed to conceal sophisticated asset management and legal expertise. My questions about Social Security benefits, my apparent confusion about investment options, and my systematic expressions of concern about maintaining independence provided additional evidence of elderly financial vulnerability. The home security approach that characterized my property protection included basic locks and simple security measures, systematic attention to neighborhood safety concern, and the kind of practical protection coordination that demonstrated limited resources for sophisticated security systems or professional monitoring services. The absence of expensive alarm systems, security cameras, or premium protection services created evidence of budget limitations, while my apparent anxiety about crime and safety issues provided additional support for Richard's assumptions about elderly vulnerability and protection. The transportation dependency that I displayed during family coordination included apparent anxiety about driving in complex traffic situations, systematic avoidance of unfamiliar route, and the kind of elderly mobility challenges that Richard interpreted as evidence of declining capability rather than strategic limitation performance. My requests for assistance with errands that required highway driving, my apparent confusion about navigation technology, and my systematic preference for familiar local destinations provided comprehensive evidence of elderly independence challenges and practical mobility constraints. The legal document confusion that I demonstrated when Richard attempted to help with basic paperwork included apparent difficulty understanding complex language, systematic requests for clarification about standard procedure, and the kind of elderly legal navigation challenges that excluded consideration of sophisticated legal knowledge or professional expertise. My apparent anxiety about signing important documents,
my systematic questions about legal implications, and my preference for professional assistance with complex coordination provided perfect evidence of elderly legal vulnerability and comprehension limitation. The insurance coordination complexity that characterized my approach to coverage management included apparent confusion about policy details, systematic concern about premium costs, and the kind of elderly insurance navigation challenges that demonstrated limited understanding of complex coverage options and financial protection strategies. My apparent difficulty comparing insurance options, my systematic anxiety about coverage gaps, and my preference for basic protection rather than comprehensive coordination provided additional evidence of elderly financial management limitations. The investment knowledge limitations that I displayed during conversations about retirement planning included apparent confusion about market terminology, systematic anxiety about financial risk, and the kind of elderly investment challenges that excluded consideration of sophisticated financial expertise or complex asset management capability. My apparent preference for simple savings accounts over complex investment coordination, my systematic expressions of concern about market volatility, and my preference for traditional financial planning approaches provided comprehensive evidence of limited financial sophistication.
The technology assistance dependency that I demonstrated during family visits included apparent inability to operate basic computer functions, systematic confusion about internet navigation, and the kind of elderly technology challenges that Richard interpreted as cognitive decline rather than strategic performance, designed to maintain the appearance of technological limitation and generational learning gaps. My requests for help with email coordination, my apparent confusion about online banking procedures, and my systematic avoidance of complex technology interaction provided perfect evidence of elderly technology vulnerability. The social isolation patterns that characterized my apparent retirement lifestyle included limited contact with professional networks, systematic avoidance of complex social coordination, the kind of elderly social limitation that Richard interpreted as loneliness and vulnerability, rather than strategic privacy protection and operational security maintenance. My apparent lack of sophisticated social connections, my preference for simple family-based activities, and my systematic avoidance of professional or business-related social interaction provided additional evidence of elderly social dependency and isolation challenges. The community involvement approach that defined my apparent social participation included basic volunteer activities, simple charitable contribution, and the kind of elderly community engagement that demonstrated practical capability without revealing sophisticated organizational knowledge or leadership experience. My participation in church activities that required minimal financial contribution, my volunteer work that emphasized basic assistance rather than complex coordination, and my apparent unfamiliarity with sophisticated community development created systematic evidence of limited social capital and simple civic engagement. The financial assistance requests that I occasionally made to Richard included apparent anxiety about unexpected expenses, systematic concern about emergency financial need, and the kind of elderly financial vulnerability that convinced him of my limited resources and increasing dependency on family support for financial security. My requests for help with home repair costs, my apparent worry about medical expense, and my systematic expressions of gratitude for his financial assistance provided comprehensive evidence of elderly financial limitation and family dependency that perfectly supported his assumptions about maternal vulnerability and asset limitation. This carefully maintained persona of financial constraint, technological limitation, and social dependency created the perfect foundation for Richard and Harold's exploitation scheme, while concealing the sophisticated legal empire and comprehensive financial authority that would soon transfer their comfortable assumptions about elderly vulnerability into devastating recognition of their complete miscalculation and systematic underestimation of their intended victims' true capability and protective authority. The systematic documentation that Richard had been accumulating throughout our interactions since William's funeral provided him with comprehensive evidence of my apparent cognitive decline, financial vulnerability, and social isolation that justified his increasingly aggressive intervention in personal affairs, while positioning his exploitation scheme as necessary family assistance rather than systematic elder abuse designed to extract maximum financial benefit from his mother's supposed helplessness and emotional dependency on family support for basic life management and decision-making capability. The medication management difficulties that I displayed during his monthly visits included apparent confusion about dosing schedules, systematic mistakes in prescription coordination, the kind of elderly healthcare navigation challenges that Richard interpreted as evidence of declining mental capacity rather than strategic performance, designed to reinforce assumptions about cognitive limitation and medical dependence. When Richard observed me struggling to organize my weekly pill containers, asking repeated questions about medication timing, and expressing apparent anxiety about drug interactions, he documented these incidents as proof of my need for daily living assistance and medical oversight. The driving incidents that Richard witnessed during our occasional errands together provided what he considered definitive evidence of declining motor skills and spatial awareness that threatened my safety and independence. The hesitation I displayed when navigating busy intersections, my apparent confusion about new traffic patterns in familiar neighborhoods, and my systematic requests for his assistance with parallel parking created compelling documentation of elderly driving challenges that supported his argument for transportation dependency and reduced independence coordination. During our trip to the grocery store in March 2024, I demonstrated the kind of shopping confusion that Richard expected from elderly individuals struggling with decision-making and financial management. My apparent difficulty choosing between similar products, my systematic comparison of prices for items I'd purchased for decades, and my request for his opinion about household purchases created perfect evidence of cognitive processing challenges and decision-making dependency that convinced him of my need for guidance and oversight in basic daily activity. The technology struggles that I demonstrated whenever Richard attempted to help me with basic computer functions provided systematic evidence of generational learning gaps and cognitive inflexibility that excluded consideration of sophisticated technical knowledge or professional expertise. When he tried to show me how to use online banking, I responded with appropriate confusion about security procedures, systematic anxiety about internet safety, and repeated requests for clarification about basic navigation that convinced him of my complete technological incompetence and dependency on traditional paper-based coordination. The financial paperwork confusion that I displayed during our discussions about estate planning and retirement coordination included apparent difficulty understanding legal terminology, systematic requests for repeated explanations of standard procedure, and the kind of elderly legal navigation challenges that Richard interpreted as evidence of cognitive decline rather than strategic information gathering about his intentions and planning coordination. My questions about power of attorney arrangements, my apparent confusion about beneficiary designations, and my systematic expressions of uncertainty about legal implications provided comprehensive evidence of legal vulnerability and comprehension limitation. The social interaction patterns that Richard observed during family gatherings and community events included apparent difficulty following complex conversations, systematic confusion about names and relation, the kind of elderly social navigation challenges that suggested cognitive processing limitations and reduced social competence. During church functions and neighborhood gatherings, I demonstrated appropriate uncertainty about recent community developments, systematic requests for clarification about social coordination, and apparent difficulty maintaining extended conversations about complex topics. The home maintenance struggles that Richard witnessed during his visits provided what he considered definitive proof of declining physical capability and practical management challenges that threatened my ability to maintain independent living arrangements. The minor household repairs that I requested his assistance with, my apparent difficulty reaching high shelves and managing heavy objects, and my systematic expressions of concern about property maintenance costs, created compelling evidence of elderly independence challenges and practical dependency needs. The memory inconsistencies that I occasionally displayed during our conversations included apparent confusion about recent events, systematic difficulty recalling specific dates and appointments, and the kind of elderly cognitive challenges that Richard interpreted as early-stage dementia rather than strategic information management designed to test his patience and document his responses to maternal vulnerability. When I asked repeated questions about family plans, expressed uncertainty about previous conversations, and demonstrated apparent confusion about scheduling coordination, he documented these incidents as evidence of cognitive decline. The emergency preparedness limitations that I demonstrated during discussions about safety planning included apparent anxiety about potential health crises, systematic confusion about emergency procedures, and the kind of elderly safety coordination challenges that convinced Richard of my need for immediate family intervention and protective oversight. My apparent difficulty understanding medical alert systems, my systematic expressions of concern about emergency communication, and my preference for traditional safety measures over technological solutions provided additional evidence of elderly vulnerability and protection needs. The financial decision-making confusion that I displayed during conversations about investment coordination and retirement planning included apparent anxiety about market volatility, systematic misunderstanding of basic financial concepts, and the kind of elderly investment challenges that excluded consideration of sophisticated financial knowledge or professional expertise. When Richard attempted to explain stock market principles or retirement account management, I responded with appropriate confusion about terminology, systematic questions about risk factors, and apparent preference for simple savings accounts over complex investment coordination. The nutrition and meal planning difficulties that Richard observed during family dinners included apparent confusion about dietary requirements, systematic challenges with menu plan, and the kind of elderly nutrition management issues that suggested declining capability for independent living coordination. My requests for assistance with grocery selection, my apparent difficulty managing cooking coordination for multiple people, and my systematic expressions of concern about food costs and meal preparation created compelling evidence of elderly domestic management challenge. The insurance coordination complexity that I demonstrated during discussions about coverage management included apparent confusion about policy details, systematic anxiety about premium costs, and the kind of elderly insurance navigation challenges that convinced Richard of my need for family assistance with complex financial protection. My apparent difficulty comparing coverage options, my systematic questions about claim procedures, and my preference for basic protection, rather than comprehensive coordination, provided additional evidence of elderly financial management limitations. The legal document anxiety that I displayed whenever Richard presented paperwork for my signature included systematic requests for detailed explanations, apparent confusion about standard legal language, and the kind of elderly legal processing challenges that he interpreted as cognitive limitation rather than professional caution and strategic document review. My insistence on reading every clause carefully, my systematic questions about legal implications, and my apparent need for multiple review sessions before signing any documents created perfect evidence of elderly legal vulnerability and comprehension challenge. The transportation dependency that became increasingly apparent during our coordination for medical appointments and errands included systematic anxiety about highway driving, apparent confusion about GPS navigation, the kind of elderly mobility challenges that convinced Richard of my need for family transportation assistance and reduced independence coordination. My requests for accompaniment to doctor appointments, my apparent difficulty managing complex driving routes, and my systematic expressions of concern about traffic navigation provided comprehensive evidence of elderly transportation limitation. The prescription management struggles that Richard documented during his assistance with pharmacy coordination included apparent confusion about generic versus brand name medications, systematic difficulty understanding dosing instruction, and the kind of elderly healthcare navigation challenges that suggested declining cognitive capability and medical management competence. My questions about drug interactions, my apparent anxiety about side effects, and my systematic requests for clarification about prescription procedures created compelling evidence of elderly medical dependency and healthcare coordination challenge. The bill payment coordination that I occasionally requested Richard's assistance with included apparent confusion about due dates, systematic difficulty managing multiple account coordination, and the kind of elderly financial management challenges that convinced him of my need for family oversight and simplified payment procedure. My apparent struggle with online bill payment systems, my systematic preference for paper statements and check writing, and my expressions of concern about automatic payment arrangements provided additional evidence of elderly financial coordination limitations. The home security concerns that I expressed during our conversations about neighborhood safety included apparent anxiety about crime rates, systematic confusion about security system options, and the kind of elderly protection coordination challenges that suggested vulnerability and need for family assistance with safety plan. My apparent difficulty understanding alarm system operations, my systematic questions about monitoring services, and my preference for basic security measures over technological solutions created perfect evidence of elderly security management limitations. The social coordination difficulties that Richard observed during planning for family gatherings and community events included apparent confusion about sigilling requirements, systematic challenges with invitation management, and the kind of elderly social planning limitations that suggested declining organizational capability and event management competence. My requests for assistance with party planning, my apparent difficulty coordinating multiple family schedules, and my systematic expressions of concern about entertaining expectations provided comprehensive evidence of elderly social management challenge. The investment knowledge limitations that I demonstrated during conversations about retirement security included apparent confusion about market terminology, systematic anxiety about financial risk, and the kind of elderly investment navigation challenges that excluded consideration of sophisticated financial expertise or professional investment management. My apparent preference for savings accounts over stock market participation, my systematic questions about investment safety, and my expressions of concern about financial market volatility created compelling evidence of elderly financial limitation and risk management challenge. The technology assistance dependency that became increasingly apparent during family visits included systematic requests for help with basic electronic devices, apparent confusion about smartphone operation, and the kind of elderly technology challenges that Richard interpreted as generational learning limitations, rather than strategic technology avoidance designed to maintain operational security and privacy protection. My apparent inability to operate television remote controls, my systematic confusion about internet navigation, and my preference for traditional communication methods provided additional evidence of elderly technology dependence. The healthcare decision-making confusion that I displayed during discussions about medical treatment options included apparent difficulty understanding complex procedures, systematic anxiety about treatment costs, and the kind of elderly healthcare navigation challenges that convinced Richard of my need for family assistance with medical coordination and decision-making support. My apparent confusion about insurance coverage details, my systematic questions about specialist referrals, and my preference for family involvement in medical consultations created perfect evidence of elderly healthcare dependency and medical management limitations. The community involvement limitations that characterized my apparent social participation included difficulty understanding complex organizational structures, systematic confusion about volunteer coordination requirements, and the kind of elderly civic engagement challenges that suggested declining social competence and community participation capability. My apparent struggle with committee responsibilities, my systematic requests for clarification about organizational procedure, and my preference for simple volunteer activities over complex community coordination provided comprehensive evidence of elderly social limitation and civic engagement challenge. The emergency response preparation that I demonstrated during discussions about crisis planning included apparent anxiety about emergency procedures, systematic confusion about communication protocol, and the kind of elderly emergency coordination challenges that convinced Richard of my need for family oversight and protective assistance during potential crisis situations. My apparent difficulty understanding emergency contact systems, my systematic questions about evacuation procedures, and my preference for traditional emergency planning over technological solutions
created compelling evidence of elderly emergency management limitation. The financial planning anxiety that I expressed during conversations about future security included systematic concern about healthcare costs, apparent confusion about long-term care options, the kind of elderly financial worry patterns that Richard interpreted as evidence of limited resources and planning capability, rather than strategic concern about family exploitation and asset protection. My questions about Medicare coverage, my apparent anxiety about prescription costs, and my systematic expressions of concern about maintaining independence provided additional evidence of elderly financial vulnerability and planning challenge. The legal consultation reluctance that I displayed whenever Richard suggested professional assistance with estate planning included apparent anxiety about attorney costs, systematic confusion about legal procedure, and the kind of elderly legal navigation challenges that convinced him of my need for family guidance and simplified legal coordination rather than independent professional consultation. My apparent preference for family assistance over professional legal services, my systematic questions about attorney fees, and my expressions of concern about legal complexity created perfect evidence of elderly legal dependency and professional service limitation. The property management difficulties that became increasingly apparent during discussions about home maintenance included systematic concern about repair costs, apparent confusion about contractor coordination, and the kind of elderly property management challenges that suggested declining capability for independent homeownership and maintenance responsibility. My apparent difficulty coordinating service appointments, my systematic anxiety about repair estimates, and my preference for family assistance over professional property management provided comprehensive evidence of elderly property coordination limitation. The prescription coordination challenges that I demonstrated during pharmacy visits included apparent confusion about insurance procedures, systematic difficulty understanding medication changes, and the kind of elderly healthcare navigation issues that convinced Richard of my need for family assistance with medical management and prescription coordination. My apparent struggle with pharmacy computer systems, my systematic questions about generic substitutions, and my preference for family accompaniment during medical errands created compelling evidence of elderly healthcare dependency and medical coordination limitation. All of this systematically accumulated evidence created the perfect foundation for Richard's belief that his elderly mother required immediate intervention, protective oversight, and family management that justified his exploitation scheme while concealing the sophisticated legal expertise and comprehensive business authority that would soon transform his comfortable assumptions about maternal vulnerability into devastating recognition of his complete miscalculation about his intended victim's true capability and protective power. The transformation of my son Richard from the careless child who once built birdhouses with his father William and spent Saturday afternoons helping me attend our garden into a calculating opportunist whose primary concern was maximizing his inheritance while minimizing his responsibility for elderly care had been gradual but systematically documented. Through increasingly mercenary conversations about my supposed limitations, asset management, and the practical challenges of maintaining an aging parent who might become a financial burden rather than a source of continued support and assistance. Richard's current worldview, shaped by 15 years working as a mid-level insurance adjuster for Pacific Northwest Mutual, reflected the systematic dehumanization that characterized his professional approach to elderly claims processing and asset evaluation. His daily experience with seniors filing disability claims, property damage reports, and life insurance coordination had created a coldly calculated perspective on aging that viewed elderly individuals primarily through the lens of financial liability, cognitive decline assessment, and the practical challenges of managing dependent family members who required increasing oversight and expensive care coordination. The professional cynicism that defined Richard's approach to elderly claims at Pacific Northwest Mutual had systematically corrupted his ability to recognize dignity, wisdom, and continued capability in aging population.
His specialization in elder fraud prevention and cognitive assessment protocols had taught him to identify vulnerability indicators, financial exploitation pattern, and decision-making limitations that he now applied to his personal evaluation of my supposed capabilities and independence challenge. The systematic training that made him effective at detecting elderly financial exploitation had ironically prepared him to become a sophisticated elder abuser himself. The financial pressure that characterized Richard's personal circumstances provided the foundational motivation for his systematic evaluation of my assets and eventual inheritance potential. His modest salary at Pacific Northwest Mutual, combined with his wife Jessica's part-time income from retail coordination, barely covered their mortgage payments on their suburban Tacoma home, their children's educational expenses, and the lifestyle maintenance that they considered essential for middle-class respectability and social positioning within their community network. The debt accumulation that had characterized Richard and Jessica's financial management over the past 8 years included credit card balances exceeding $47,000, an underwater mortgage that left them with negative equity in their home, and systematic overspending on lifestyle coordination that prioritized appearance over financial stability. The private school tuition for their twin daughters, combined with expensive extracurricular activities and social positioning requirements, created monthly expenses that consistently exceeded their household income, while building unsustainable financial pressure that required immediate resolution. The investment failures that had characterized Richard's attempts at wealth building included several disastrous stock market decisions, a failed real estate investment that resulted in foreclosure, and systematic participation in multi-level marketing schemes that promised rapid financial advancement but delivered only additional debt and social embarrassment. His pattern of chasing get-rich-quick opportunities while ignoring fundamental financial planning principles had created a desperate need for capital infusion that made my supposed assets increasingly attractive as potential debt solution and lifestyle rescue coordination. The social positioning pressure that defined Richard and Jessica's lifestyle requirements included maintaining appearances within their suburban social network, supporting their daughter's competitive social activity, and the systematic coordination of material possessions and experiences that demonstrated financial success rather than the mounting debt and financial instability that actually characterized their household economy. The luxury vehicles, designer clothing, and expensive vacation coordination that they maintained through credit and payment plans created unsustainable financial obligations while reinforcing their identification with successful middle-class families. The career stagnation that characterized Richard's professional development at Pacific Northwest Mutual reflected his systematic lack of ambition, limited problem-solving capability, and the kind of mediocre performance that prevented advancement while maintaining just enough competence to avoid termination. His 15-year tenure in the same position, combined with minimal salary increases and reduced advancement opportunity, created the perfect environment for resentment and financial frustration that made external wealth sources increasingly attractive as alternatives to professional development and career advancement. The relationship dynamics that governed Richard and Jessica's marriage included systematic financial arguments, mounting pressure about lifestyle maintenance, and the kind of middle-class anxiety that blamed external circumstances, rather than personal decisions, for their economic challenge. Jessica's increasing demands for financial security, combined with her systematic criticism of Richard's income limitations and career performance, created household pressure that made inheritance planning and elderly asset management increasingly urgent priorities, rather than natural family consideration. The parenting philosophy that shaped Richard and Jessica's approach to their twin daughters emphasized material provision over character development, competitive advantage over collaborative learning, and a kind of consumer-driven childhood that required substantial financial investment while building entitled expectations and systematic disregard for family responsibility and intergenerational respect. Their daughters' expensive activities, designer possessions, and competitive social positioning created monthly expenses that reinforced financial pressure while building family values,
that prioritized material accumulation over emotional connection. The elderly care philosophy that Richard had developed through his professional experience at Pacific Northwest Mutual reflected systematic assumptions about cognitive decline, financial vulnerability, and the practical challenges of maintaining aging family members who required increasing oversight and expensive coordination. His training in elder fraud detection had taught him to identify decision-making limitations, memory problems, and financial management challenges that he now systematically applied to evaluate my supposed capabilities and independence limitations. The inheritance planning approach that characterized Richard's long-term financial strategy included systematic evaluation of my assets, careful calculation of potential wealth transfer, and strategic positioning for maximum benefit extraction, while minimizing his responsibility for elderly care coordination and medical expense management. His assumption that my estate consisted primarily of our modest family home and William's pension benefits led to calculated planning for asset liquidation and debt resolution that would solve his immediate financial problems while eliminating his ongoing elderly care obligation. The manipulation tactics that Richard had systematically developed through his professional experience with vulnerable elderly clients included emotional pressure techniques, financial complexity exploitation, and the kind of systematic persuasion methods that convinced aging individuals to accept family oversight and simplified decision-making coordination. His expertise in identifying cognitive vulnerabilities and emotional dependencies provided him with sophisticated tools for elderly manipulation, while maintaining the appearance of loving family concern and protective assistance.
The legal knowledge that Richard had accumulated through his insurance industry experience included basic understanding of power of attorney arrangements, estate planning procedures, and the kind of simplified legal coordination that convinced elderly individuals to accept family management, while transferring decision-making authority to adult children who claimed expertise in complex legal and financial coordination. His professional familiarity with legal documents and procedures provided credibility for his suggestions about simplified asset management and family-controlled financial coordination. The healthcare expertise that Richard claimed through his insurance industry experience included systematic knowledge of Medicare procedures, prescription coordination, the kind of medical management complexity that convinced elderly individuals to accept family assistance, while transferring healthcare decision-making authority to adult children who understood insurance coordination and medical expense management. His professional familiarity with healthcare systems provided credibility for his suggestions about medical oversight and family-controlled healthcare coordination. The social isolation strategy that Richard had systematically implemented since William's death included gradual reduction of my social contacts, systematic discouragement of independent activity, and the kind of family-centered social coordination that convinced elderly individuals to depend on family members for social interaction, while reducing outside influence that might challenge family-controlled and decision-making authority. His systematic positioning as my primary social contact created emotional dependency while eliminating external perspectives that might question his intention. The financial dependency creation that characterized Richard's approach to elderly management included systematic assumption of responsibility for complex financial tasks, gradual elimination of my independent financial decision, and the kind of family-controlled money management that convinced elderly individuals to accept simplified coordination while transferring financial authority to adult children who claimed expertise in complex financial planning and investment coordination. The cognitive assessment approach that Richard applied to evaluate my supposed limitations included systematic attention to memory inconsistencies, decision-making challenges, and the kind of elderly cognitive monitoring that identified vulnerability indicators while building documentation for family intervention and protective oversight. His professional training in cognitive evaluation provided him with sophisticated tools for identifying and exploiting elderly mental processing challenges while maintaining the appearance of concerned family assessment and protective coordination. The emergency preparedness philosophy that guided Richard's approach to elderly safety planning included systematic evaluation of crisis response capabilities, emergency communication limitation, the kind of protective coordination that convinced elderly individuals to accept family oversight while transferring emergency decision-making authority to adult children who understood crisis management and safety coordination. His systematic positioning as emergency contact and crisis coordinator created dependency while establishing family control over critical decisions. The property management approach that Richard had systematically implemented for my home maintenance included gradual assumption of responsibility for complex repairs, systematic evaluation of property value and maintenance costs, and the kind of family-controlled property coordination that convinced elderly individuals to accept simplified homeownership while transferring property decision-making authority to adult children who understood real estate management and maintenance coordination. The healthcare decision-making philosophy that characterized Richard's approach to medical coordination included systematic assumption of responsibility for complex medical decisions, gradual elimination of my independent healthcare navigation, the kind of family-controlled medical management that convinced elderly individuals to accept simplified healthcare while transferring medical decision-making authority to adult children who understood insurance coordination and medical system navigation. The relationship with Harold Brennan that provided the foundation for their exploitation scheme had developed through Richard's systematic networking within his professional and social circles to identify potential accomplices who shared his opportunistic approach to elderly asset management and marriage coordination. Harold's financial desperation, combined with his willingness to participate in systematic elder exploitation, created the perfect partnership for marriage fraud that would provide both men with access to my supposed assets while eliminating their individual responsibility for elderly care and support. Harold's business failures that made him a willing participant in Richard's scheme included the systematic deterioration of his auto repair business over the past 5 years, mounting debts that threatened his personal financial security, and the kind of economic desperation that made elder exploitation appear as practical business opportunity rather than moral failure and criminal activity. His garage operation that struggled with modern vehicle technology, combined with his inability to compete with dealership service departments and chain repair facilities, created financial pressure that made participation in marriage fraud attractive as debt solution and retirement. The character assessment that revealed Harold's suitability for elder exploitation included his systematic demonstration of flexible morality, his willingness to deceive elderly individuals for financial benefit, and the kind of opportunistic personality that enabled participation in family betrayal while maintaining the appearance of romantic interest and companionate marriage coordination. His previous relationships that ended due to financial disagreements, combined with his pattern of borrowing money from romantic partners, demonstrated character flaws that made him ideal for systematic elder financial exploitation. The coordination between Richard and Harold that enabled their systematic approach to marriage fraud included careful planning of romantic development, strategic presentation of financial coordination as marriage benefit, and the kind of collaborative manipulation that convinced elderly individuals to accept rushed marriage coordination while transferring asset control to new husbands who claimed romantic interest rather than financial motivation. Their systematic planning sessions, disguised as casual social interaction, created comprehensive exploitation strategy while maintaining operational security and legal protection. This worldview that prioritized financial extraction over family loyalty, asset acquisition over elderly dignity, systematic exploitation over authentic care, would soon collide with the devastating reality that their intended victim possessed comprehensive legal authority and protective capability that could transform their comfortable assumptions about elder vulnerability into the most expensive education about respect, character, and consequence delivery that any manipulative family members had ever received. The early years of Richard's childhood in our comfortable Maplewood home, during the 1990s and early 2000s, represented a time when our family relationships were built on genuine affection, shared activities, and the kind of intergenerational bonding that created lasting emotional connections between parents and children who valued family time, collaborative learning, and mutual respect that honored both individual development and collective family welfare throughout the challenging but rewarding process of raising children who understood the importance of character, integrity, and family loyalty above material acquisition and social position. The foundation of love and investment that William and I provided during Richard's formative years included countless hours of homework assistance, patient guidance through adolescent challenges, and the systematic demonstration of family values that emphasized education, hard work, and moral integrity as the cornerstones of sustainable success and personal fulfillment. The Saturday afternoons that Richard spent with William in our garage workshop, learning basic carpentry and mechanical skills while discussing life principles and character development, created father-son memories that we believed would influence his adult decision-making and relationship priorities throughout his professional and personal development. The educational support that characterized our approach to Richard's academic development included comprehensive assistance with school projects, systematic encouragement of his interests in science and mathematics, and the kind of parental investment that demonstrated our belief in his potential while building confidence and intellectual curiosity that would serve him throughout his educational journey and professional career. The science fair projects that we helped coordinate, the mathematics tutoring that William provided during Richard's struggles with advanced algebra, and the college preparation assistance that consumed our evenings for 2 years represented substantial family investment in his future success and character development. The financial sacrifices that William and I made to support Richard's educational opportunities included systematic reduction of our own discretionary spending, careful budget management that prioritized his needs over our comfort, and the kind of parental financial planning that enabled his college education while building family debt that required years to resolve. The part-time work that William accepted during Richard's high school years, combined with my overtime coordination at the community college library, generated additional income that supported his educational expenses while demonstrating our commitment to his future success and development. The character education that formed the cornerstone of Richard's childhood development included systematic teaching about honesty, respect for elders, family loyalty, and the moral principles that guided ethical decision-making throughout complex life situations and relationship challenges. The conversations that we shared during family dinners about current events, ethical dilemmas, and community responsibility were designed to build his moral foundation while developing critical thinking skills that would enable him to navigate adult challenges with integrity and wisdom. The family traditions that created emotional connection and cultural continuity included annual camping trips to state parks, holiday celebrations that emphasized family togetherness over expensive gifts, and the kind of shared experiences that built lasting memories while teaching values of simplicity, gratitude, and family appreciation. The camping equipment that William gradually accumulated over several years, combined with my careful meal planning and activity coordination, created affordable family vacations that strengthened our relationships while building Richard's appreciation for natural beauty and simple pleasure. The community involvement that characterized our family's approach to civic responsibility included volunteer work at local food banks, participation in neighborhood improvement projects, and the kind of service activities that taught Richard about community contribution and social responsibility. The Saturday mornings that we spent together at the community center, sorting donations and preparing meals for families in need, were designed to build his empathy and understanding of social challenges, while demonstrating the importance of helping others who faced difficulties and hardship. The religious education that provided spiritual foundation for Richard's moral development included regular church attendance, youth group participation, and the kind of faith-based learning that emphasized compassion, forgiveness, and service to others as fundamental principles of meaningful life and authentic relationship building. The church camp experiences that we supported financially despite budget constraints, combined with his participation in mission trips and community service projects, created opportunities for character development and spiritual growth. The work ethic development that William and I emphasized throughout Richard's adolescence included age-appropriate chores, summer job requirements, and the systematic teaching about personal responsibility and financial management that prepared him for adult independence and professional success. The paper wrote that he maintained during middle school, combined with the lawn care business that he operated during high school summers, provided practical experience with customer service, financial management, and work coordination while building character and self-reliance. The family business involvement that Richard experienced during his teenage years included occasional assistance with William's weekend handyman services and systematic exposure to customer relations, quality workmanship, and the business principles that guided ethical professional practice and sustainable success. The tools that William gradually taught him to use, combined with the customer interaction skills that he developed through these experiences, provided practical education about work quality and professional integrity. The college preparation support that dominated our family focus during Richard's junior and senior years of high school included comprehensive assistance with application procedures, financial aid coordination, and the systematic research into educational opportunities that matched his academic interests with our family's financial capability. The college visits that required careful budget planning and weekend travel coordination demonstrated our commitment to his educational success, while building excitement about his future possibilities and career development. The transition support that we provided during Richard's college years included regular care packages, systematic financial assistance that strained our budget, and the kind of emotional encouragement that helped him navigate academic challenges and social adjustment difficulty. The phone calls that I initiated weekly to check on his progress, combined with William's visits during parents' weekends, maintained family connection while demonstrating our continued investment in his success and development. The post-graduation assistance that characterized our support during Richard's early career development included temporary financial help during job transitions, career guidance based on our life experience, and the kind of family support that enabled him to establish independent living arrangements while building professional competence and financial stability. The apartment deposit that we provided when he secured his first job, combined with the furniture and household items that we contributed to his independent living setup, represented substantial family investment in his adult success. The relationship guidance that we offered during Richard's dating years and eventual marriage to Jessica included family inclusion activities, systematic encouragement of healthy relationship development, and the kind of intergenerational wisdom sharing that helped young couples navigate communication challenges and build sustainable partnerships. The pre-marriage counseling that we arranged and financially supported, combined with our assistance with wedding planning and expenses, demonstrated our investment in his family development and long-term happiness. The grandparent role transition that William and I embraced when Richard and Jessica's twin daughters were born included systematic childcare assistance, financial support for child-related expenses, and the kind of intergenerational family coordination that strengthened family bonds while providing practical assistance during the challenging early years of parenting. The babysitting coordination that enabled Richard and Jessica to maintain their social relationships and professional development, combined with the financial assistance that we provided for children's clothing and activities, represented continued family investment in their success and stability. The home purchase assistance that we provided when Richard and Jessica decided to buy their first house included contribution toward their down payment, co-signing arrangements that enabled their mortgage approval, and the systematic guidance about homeownership responsibilities and financial management that helped them navigate the complex process of property acquisition and maintenance coordination. The furniture and household items that we contributed to their new home establishment, combined with William's assistance with basic repairs and maintenance projects, demonstrated our continued investment in their family development. The financial support coordination that characterized our assistance during Richard's early marriage included systematic help with unexpected expenses, emergency assistance during medical crises, and the kind of family financial cooperation that enabled young families to maintain stability while building independent financial capability and professional advancement. The car repair assistance that William provided through his mechanical skills, combined with my occasional childcare coordination that reduced their daycare expenses,
represented practical family support that strengthened relationships while providing economic assistance. The career development support that we offered throughout Richard's professional advancement included networking assistance through William's professional contacts, systematic encouragement during career challenges, and the kind of family advice and guidance that helped him navigate workplace politics and professional development opportunities. The professional wardrobe assistance that we provided during his early career, combined with the career counseling that drew on our combined life experience, demonstrated our continued investment in his professional success and advancement. The family vacation coordination that created positive memories and strengthened relationships included annual trips that we planned and partially funded, bringing together multiple generations for shared experiences and family bonding activities. The rental cabin expenses that we absorbed to enable these gatherings, combined with the meal planning and activity coordination that I managed, created opportunities for family connection while building lasting memories and traditions. The emergency assistance that we provided during various family crises included immediate financial help during Jessica's medical complications, systematic support during temporary unemployment period, and the kind of family crisis response that demonstrated unconditional love and practical assistance during challenging times. The temporary housing that we offered when they faced financial difficulties, combined with the childcare coordination that enabled their economic recovery, represented substantial family sacrifice and investment in their stability. The educational support that we continued providing for our granddaughters included systematic assistance with school expenses, extracurricular activity coordination, that kind of intergenerational educational investment that strengthened family bonds while supporting child development and academic achievement. The private lesson payments that strained our retirement budget, combined with the transportation assistance that I provided for various activities, demonstrated our continued commitment to family success and development. The holiday and celebration coordination that maintained family traditions included systematic financial investment in gift giving, meal preparation, and kind of family event management that created positive experiences while strengthening intergenerational relationships and cultural continuity. The Christmas expenses that consumed substantial portions of our retirement income, combined with the birthday celebrations and graduation parties that we hosted and funded, represented ongoing family investment and emotional connection. But the systematic erosion of gratitude and respect that began appearing in Richard's behavior following William's death revealed a character transformation that replaced family appreciation with exploitation planning, emotional connection with financial calculation, and intergenerational respect with systematic elder manipulation designed to extract maximum benefit while minimizing ongoing responsibility for family relationships and elderly care coordination. The funeral coordination that I managed alone while grieving William's sudden death included substantial financial expenses, complex arrangement management, and the kind of crisis coordination that should have strengthened family bonds, but instead became the foundation for Richard's system evaluation of my capabilities and asset assessment that positioned my widowhood as opportunity for financial extraction rather than time requiring family support and emotional assistance. This comprehensive foundation of love, investment, and family sacrifice that William and I had provided throughout Richard's development would soon be completely betrayed through his systematic exploitation scheme that treated decades of parental love and financial sacrifice as opportunity for wealth extraction rather than motivation for gratitude, respect, and continued family loyalty that honored intergenerational relationships and cultural traditions, that valued elderly wisdom and family dignity above personal financial advantage and material acquisition. The systematic escalation of Richard's disrespectful behavior throughout the 18 months following William's funeral revealed a calculated progression from subtle manipulation to aggressive exploitation that demonstrated his complete transformation from loving son to ruthless opportunist, whose primary concern was asset extraction rather than family loyalty. Elderly dignity, or the moral obligations that children owe to parents who sacrificed decades of their lives for their children's success and development. The initial subtle manipulations that characterized Richard's early exploitation attempts included systematic questioning of my decision-making capability, gentle suggestions about the challenges of elderly independence, and the kind of patronizing concern that positioned family intervention as loving assistance rather than systematic preparation for asset control and elderly management. His monthly visits that gradually extended into comprehensive household inspection, combined with his increasing assumption of responsibility for complex errands and financial coordination, created dependency patterns, while building documentation for eventual guardianship or power of attorney arrangement. The financial pressure tactics that escalated throughout 2023 included increasingly aggressive suggestions about simplified money management, systematic criticism of my spending decisions, and the kind of financial oversight assumption that convinced elderly individuals to accept family control while surrendering independent decision-making authority. His unauthorized review of my mail during visits, combined with his systematic questions about bank statements and investment coordination, revealed comprehensive preparation for asset evaluation and transfer plan. The social isolation coordination that Richard implemented included systematic discouragement of my independent activities, strategic interference with friendship maintenance, and the kind of social dependency creation that eliminated external perspectives that might challenge his exploitation planning or question his intentions regarding elderly care and family relationship management. His subtle criticism of my community involvement, combined with his scheduling of family obligations that conflicted with social activities, gradually reduced my apparent social network while increasing emotional dependency on family interaction. The healthcare manipulation that became increasingly aggressive included unauthorized communication with my physicians, systematic assumption of medical coordination responsibility, and the kind of healthcare oversight that positioned family control as necessary assistance while building legal foundation for medical decision-making authority. His attendance at medical appointments that I had not requested, combined with his systematic discussion of my confusion about healthcare coordination, created professional documentation of supposed cognitive decline and medical management challenge. The property management assumption that escalated during late 2023 included unauthorized coordination of home maintenance projects, systematic evaluation of property value and maintenance cost, and the kind of real estate oversight that positioned family control as practical assistance while building foundation for property transfer or sale coordination. His hiring of contractors without consultation, combined with his systematic coordination of property improvements that served his interests rather than my preferences, demonstrated increasing control assumption and asset management plan. The emergency preparedness manipulation that reached crisis levels in early 2024 included systematic creation of artificial urgency about safety planning, aggressive pressure for power of attorney arrangement, and the kind of crisis preparation that convinced elderly individuals to surrender decision-making authority while accepting family protection and oversight coordination. His coordination of medical alert systems and emergency contact arrangements that excluded my input, combined with his systematic positioning as primary decision-maker for crisis situations, revealed comprehensive preparation for legal authority assumption. The ultimate breaking point that triggered my decision to deploy comprehensive legal consequence when Richard presented me with pre-signed marriage documents and demanded immediate signature on financial transfer paperwork that would have completed his exploitation scheme, while eliminating my legal protection and independent decision-making authority. This final manipulation attempt included systematic emotional pressure, aggressive time constraints, and the kind of elder abuse that violated every principle of family respect and intergenerational dignity. The wedding planning pressure that reached crescendo during early May included Richard's systematic assumption of all decision-making authority, his coordination of venue arrangements without consultation, and his aggressive timeline that prevented careful consideration of legal implications and financial consequences. The church booking that he completed without my approval, combined with his coordination of catering and reception planning that excluded my preferences, demonstrated complete control assumption and systematic elimination of my agency in decisions that would affect my entire future. The financial documentation pressure that culminated in the May 15th confrontation included comprehensive paperwork for joint bank accounts, power of attorney arrangement, and property transfer agreements that would have provided Richard and Harold with immediate access to assets, while eliminating my independent financial control. The urgent presentation of these documents, combined with systematic pressure for immediate signing, without legal consultation, revealed the comprehensive scope of their exploitation planning and asset extraction coordination. The emotional manipulation tactics that Richard employed during this final confrontation included systematic guilt about family trust and cooperation, aggressive arguments about practical marriage plans, and the kind of psychological pressure designed to overcome reasonable caution while positioning resistance as family betrayal rather than prudent legal protection. His systematic coordination with Harold to create unified pressure for immediate document signing, combined with their emotional manipulation about commitment demonstration and marriage preparation, revealed sophisticated elder abuse techniques and collaborative exploitation plans. The comprehensive legal empire that I had been operating beneath their assumptions about elderly limitations represented 47 years of systematic business development, strategic professional networking, and the kind of sophisticated legal expertise that had built extraordinary wealth. Maintaining complete anonymity and operational security that protected both personal relationships and business empire integrity across multiple generations of legal practice and community service throughout the Pacific Northwest legal system.
The Whitmore Legal Consortium that I founded in 1977 as a modest family law practice had grown through strategic acquisition, exceptional client service, and systematic innovation into a $340 million legal empire that included 12 regional offices throughout Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, with over 200 staff attorneys specializing in corporate law, estate planning, elder law protection, and the kind of comprehensive legal services that protected vulnerable populations while building community prosperity and legal system integrity. The sophisticated technology infrastructure that enabled global legal coordination from my modest Maplewood home included quantum encrypted communication systems, holographic display capabilities, and advanced case management coordination that connected my operations center with superior courts, regulatory agencies, and legal professional networks throughout the Pacific Northwest. The artificial intelligence systems that supported legal research, case analysis, and regulatory compliance monitoring operated through partnerships with MIT, Stanford Law School, and the most advanced legal technology companies in the international legal services industry. The professional reputation that I had established through 4 decades of legal excellence included recognition from the American Bar Association, systematic collaboration with state and federal judicial systems, and the kind of legal authority that provided immediate access to superior court coordination, prosecutorial cooperation, and regulatory enforcement that could address elder exploitation with unprecedented speed and comprehensive consequence delivery through legitimate legal channels and institutional authority. The wealth management coordination that supported Whitmore Legal Consortium operations included sophisticated investment portfolios, international property holdings, and the kind of financial authority that enabled immediate legal action coordination while maintaining operational independence. Community investment that strengthened legal system integrity and elder protection services throughout major metropolitan areas and rural communities that depended on legal assistance and advocacy services. The comprehensive analysis of Richard and Harold's dependency on legal systems, controlled through Whitmore Legal Consortium, revealed their complete vulnerability to systematic consequence coordination and justice delivery that could transform their comfortable assumptions about elderly exploitation into devastating education about legal authority and protective capability that defended vulnerable populations while providing comprehensive elder abuse prevention and community protection services. The insurance industry coordination that connected Richard's employment at Pacific Northwest Mutual with Whitmore Legal Consortium business relationships included legal services contracts, regulatory compliance assistance, and the kind of professional coordination that provided comprehensive oversight of insurance industry practices, while maintaining authority over employment coordination and professional licensing that determined career advancement and industry standing for insurance professionals throughout the Pacific Northwest regional market. The automotive industry connections that linked Harold's failing repair business with Whitmore Legal Consortium client networks included commercial legal services, regulatory compliance assistance, and the kind of business coordination that provided comprehensive oversight of automotive industry practices, while maintaining authority over licensing coordination and professional certification that determined business operation capability and industry standing for automotive service provider. The real estate coordination that governed property transactions throughout the region included comprehensive legal service provision, title insurance coordination, and the kind of professional authority that controlled property transfer procedures while maintaining oversight of real estate, professional licensing, and industry regulation that determined career advancement and business operation capability for real estate professionals and property management company. The financial services oversight that characterized Whitmore Legal Consortium authority included banking industry legal representation, regulatory compliance coordination, and the kind of professional authority that controlled financial service provision while maintaining oversight of professional licensing and industry regulation that determined career advancement and business operation capability for financial service professionals throughout regional banking and investment management networks. The consequence implementation that began at 8:47 a.m. on May 16 after Richard's final manipulation attempt would provide him and Harold with the most comprehensive education about elder exploitation and legal authority that any manipulative family members had ever received, through systematic justice delivery and professional consequence coordination, demonstrated the reality of legal protection and community defense against elder abuse and family exploitation. The employment consequence coordination that initiated Richard's professional destruction included immediate communication with Pacific Northwest Mutual leadership regarding employee conduct investigation, systematic review of professional licensing compliance, and the kind of regulatory oversight that revealed his systematic violation of insurance industry ethics, standards, and elder protection protocols. The investigation that revealed his application of professional elder fraud detection training to personal family exploitation, combined with documentation of his systematic elderly manipulation and abuse planning, resulted in immediate suspension and professional licensing review that eliminated his career advancement potential. The business license revocation that eliminated Harold's automotive repair operation included comprehensive regulatory compliance review, systematic investigation of business practice violation, and the kind of professional oversight that revealed his participation and elder exploitation while operating under state business licensing authority. The investigation that documented his systematic collaboration with family member exploitation schemes, combined with evidence of his fraudulent romantic coordination and financial manipulation planning, resulted in immediate business license suspension and civil liability exposure. The legal consequence coordination that addressed their systematic elder abuse included comprehensive documentation of exploitation planning, immediate restraining order implementation, and the kind of protective legal action that demonstrated community commitment to elder protection while providing systematic consequence delivery for individuals who violated elderly dignity and family trust through exploitation schemes and financial manipulation. The financial accountability implementation that addressed their systematic asset targeting included immediate forensic accounting review, comprehensive investigation of exploitation planning coordination, and the kind of financial consequence delivery that eliminated their economic benefit from elder abuse while providing restitution and protective financial coordination that preserved elderly independence and dignity throughout legal consequence delivery and justice implementation. The wedding ceremony that Richard had scheduled for Saturday, May 18, 2024, at St. Catherine's Chapel, would provide the most dramatic demonstration of legal authority and elder protection that any exploitation scheme had ever encountered, when their comfortable assumptions about elder vulnerability collided with the reality of comprehensive legal capability and protective justice that had been carefully concealed beneath their victim's grieving widow persona. The morning coordination, that began at 6:30 a.m. on wedding day, included systematic legal documentation preparation, comprehensive consequence delivery planning, and the kind of professional coordination that ensured maximum educational impact while maintaining complete legal compliance and operational security throughout the justice delivery process. The secure communication protocols that connected my home operations center with superior court systems, law enforcement coordination, and legal professional networks throughout the Pacific Northwest enabled real-time consequence coordination and systematic justice delivery. The chapel arrival coordination that occurred at 1:45 p.m., exactly 15 minutes before the scheduled ceremony, included comprehensive legal authority demonstration, systematic consequence delivery implementation, and the kind of dramatic justice coordination that provided Richard and Harold with irrefutable evidence of their complete miscalculation about elderly capability and legal authority, while delivering community education about elder protection and family loyalty requirements. The legal document presentation that occurred as Richard and Harold prepared to complete their exploitation scheme included comprehensive evidence of their systematic elder abuse planning, detailed documentation of their financial manipulation, and the kind of legal consequence delivery that transformed their wedding ceremony into the most expensive education about respect, dignity, and legal protection that any manipulative family members had ever received. The marriage annulment coordination that occurred at the altar included immediate legal authority implementation, systematic documentation of fraud and elder abuse, and the kind of protective legal action that demonstrated community commitment to elderly dignity while providing comprehensive consequence delivery for exploitation schemes that violated family trust and intergenerational respect. The Superior Court judge, who arrived to coordinate annulment procedures, a longtime professional colleague and Whitmore legal consortium partner, provided immediate legal authority demonstration while ensuring complete legal compliance and protective coordination. The arrest coordination that provided final consequence delivery included comprehensive law enforcement cooperation, systematic criminal charge implementation, and the kind of community protection that demonstrated commitment to elder abuse prevention, while providing educational consequences that protected other vulnerable elderly individuals from systematic exploitation and family betrayal. The fraud charges, elder abuse violations, and conspiracy prosecutions that resulted from their wedding day exposure eliminated their ability to exploit other vulnerable elderly individuals while providing comprehensive justice delivery and community protection. The systematic legal consequence delivery that transformed Richard and Harold's comfortable assumptions about elderly exploitation into devastating education about legal authority and community protection created permanent changes in their circumstances while providing comprehensive demonstration of the reality that elderly wisdom, professional capability, and family authority don't disappear when they become inconvenient for personal financial planning and inheritance acceleration schemes. The professional destruction that eliminated Richard's insurance industry career included permanent licensing revocation, systematic industry blacklisting, and the kind of professional consequence that prevented future employment in positions requiring trust, integrity, and elder protection capability. The financial accountability that addressed his exploitation planning included comprehensive restitution requirements, civil liability exposure, and the kind of economic consequence that eliminated benefit from elder abuse while providing protective coordination for vulnerable elderly population. The business elimination that destroyed Harold's automotive repair operation included permanent licensing revocation, systematic regulatory sanction, and the kind of professional consequence that prevented future business operation in industries requiring customer trust and ethical business practice coordination. The criminal prosecution that addressed his elder exploitation participation included fraud charges, conspiracy violations, and the kind of legal consequence that provided community protection while demonstrating commitment to elderly dignity and family respect requirements. The family relationship restructuring that resulted from comprehensive consequence delivery included permanent elimination of Richard's access to family resources, systematic termination of financial assistance coordination, and a kind of family boundary establishment that protected elderly dignity while providing educational consequences for family betrayal and intergenerational disrespect. The inheritance elimination that removed Richard from estate planning coordination demonstrated the reality that family loyalty and elderly respect determine generational wealth transfer rather than biological relationship or manipulation. The community education impact that resulted from their systematic consequence delivery included comprehensive awareness about elder exploitation prevention, systematic demonstration of legal protection capability, and the kind of community protection that strengthened elderly security while providing educational consequences for individuals who threatened vulnerable populations through exploitation schemes and family betrayal coordination. The ultimate lesson that Richard and Harold learned through their comprehensive consequence delivery was that elderly individuals often possess sophisticated capability, professional authority, and protective resources that enable immediate justice delivery for exploitation attempts while maintaining community security and family dignity throughout generational transitions and elder care coordination. The assumption that advanced age equals vulnerability and exploitation opportunity represents dangerous miscalculation that can result in devastating consequences for individuals who violate elderly dignity and family respect requirements. The wedding that was supposed to complete their financial exploitation scheme instead became the most expensive education about respect, authority, and consequence delivery that any manipulative family members had ever received. Sometimes the most powerful lesson you can provide entitled relatives is comprehensive understanding that elderly wisdom and legal authority aren't optional conveniences that disappear when they threaten personal financial planning and asset extraction scheme. Remember, family respect and elderly dignity, built on genuine character and intergenerational appreciation, create foundations for lasting family prosperity and authentic community development, while elder exploitation and systematic family betrayal destroy not only individual relationships, also the moral foundation necessary for sustainable community welfare and generational prosperity that honors wisdom and experience, alongside innovation and development that serves collective family and community welfare across generations of social and economic change. The grandmother they attempted to exploit turned out to control not just their immediate circumstances, but their entire professional and legal standing within the community, teaching them that respect for elderly family members isn't just moral obligation, it's practical necessity for anyone who wants to maintain professional credibility and legal standing in communities where character determines prosperity and family loyalty guides generational success, coordination, and community contribution that honors both individual achievement and collective cultural welfare throughout changeable and economic circumstances that require both innovation and wisdom for sustainable prosperity and authentic community development. The quiet satisfaction that filled my Maplewood home on a crisp November morning in 2024 came not from revenge, but from the restoration of dignity and the protection of countless other elderly individuals who would never face the exploitation that Richard and Harold had planned. The newspaper articles spread across my kitchen table told the complete story of their downfall, serving as both validation and warning to others who might consider elder abuse as a path to easy wealth. Former insurance adjuster sentenced in elder exploitation scheme, read the headline in the Pacific Northwest Legal Journal. The article detailed Richard's 18-month federal prison sentence for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, mail fraud and violation of fiduciary duty. His insurance license had been permanently revoked, his name placed on the National Elder Abuse Registry, and his professional reputation destroyed beyond repair. The financial restitution order required him to pay $21,000 in damages, money he would struggle to earn working minimum wage jobs for the rest of his career. Harold's fate proved equally comprehensive. His auto repair business had been liquidated to pay legal fees and restitution. The state regulatory board had permanently banned him from operating any business requiring customer trust or financial access. Most satisfying of all, the romantic manipulation techniques he'd used against elderly women had been documented and shared with law enforcement agencies throughout the region, making it impossible for him to repeat his predatory pattern. The restraining orders that protected me from both men would remain in effect indefinitely. Richard was prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly, visiting my property or making any claims against my estate. The legal documentation made clear that any future contact would result in immediate arrest and additional criminal charges. Jessica filed for divorce 2 weeks after Richard's arrest, taking their twin daughters and moving back to her parents' home in Oregon. The shame of being married to a convicted elder abuser, combined with the financial devastation of legal fees and restitution payments, had destroyed their marriage and eliminated any possibility of rebuilding their lives together. The custody arrangement granted Jessica primary custody while requiring supervised visitation for Richard. The family court judge had been particularly harsh in his assessment, noting that anyone capable of systematically abusing their own elderly mother posed a potential risk to children who might someday care for aging grandparents or vulnerable family members. Most painfully for Richard, his daughters, now 13 years old, had learned the truth about their father's exploitation scheme. The shame and betrayal they felt had damaged their relationship beyond repair. According to mutual acquaintances, they refused to speak with him during court-mandated visits, and had asked their mother if they could change their last name. The insurance industry responded swiftly to Richard's conviction. Pacific Northwest Mutual not only terminated his employment, but also conducted a comprehensive review of all elderly claims he had processed during his 15-year tenure. The investigation revealed a pattern of questionable decision-making that favored cost-cutting over client protection, resulting in additional civil lawsuits and regulatory sanctions. The case became a landmark example in insurance industry training programs, demonstrating how professional knowledge of vulnerability assessment could be corrupted into systematic exploitation. Richard's name became synonymous with the dangers of allowing personal financial pressure to override professional ethics and family loyalty. Harold's automotive repair business became a cautionary tale within the Better Business Bureau's Elder Protection Initiative. The systematic documentation of his romantic manipulation techniques helped law enforcement identify similar predatory patterns throughout the region, leading to the discovery and prosecution of 3 additional elder exploitation schemes. The Maplewood community's response to the revelation of my true identity evolved from shock to pride to protective solidarity. Neighbors who had watched me struggle with grocery bags and simple errands felt both amazed and slightly embarrassed by their assumptions, but quickly transformed their embarrassment into fierce loyalty and protection. The local senior center where I had occasionally attended events invited me to speak about elder protection and financial security. These presentations, conducted under strict security protocols, helped educate hundreds of elderly residents about exploitation warning signs, while providing practical guidance for protecting their assets and dignity. The Whitmore Legal Consortium established the William Whitmore Elder Protection Foundation in memory of my late husband, providing free legal services to elderly individuals facing family exploitation or financial abuse. The foundation's first-year budget of $2.3 million enabled comprehensive protection services for over 400 vulnerable seniors throughout the Pacific Northwest. The most profound change in my daily life wasn't the restoration of my true identity, but the elimination of the emotional burden I had carried since William's death. The constant vigilance required to maintain my vulnerable widow persona, combined with the heartbreak of watching my son transform into a predator, had created stress and sadness that I hadn't fully acknowledged until it was finally lifted. My relationship with my granddaughters required careful rebuilding, Through supervised visits arranged by family court services, I gradually helped them understand that their grandmother's deception had been necessary protection rather than family betrayal. Their anger at their father eventually evolved into pride in their grandmother's strength and wisdom. The modest home on Elm Street remained my primary residence, though I quietly upgraded the security systems and communication technology while maintaining the humble exterior that had served me so well. The neighbors who now knew my true identity showed remarkable discretion, protecting my privacy while offering genuine friendship rather than the condescending assistance they had previously provided. The transformation from victim to victor taught me that the greatest protection against exploitation isn't wealth or power, but the wisdom to recognize threats and the courage to respond decisively when family loyalty is violated. The legal authority I had built over 47 years provided the tools for justice, but the moral foundation that William and I had tried to instill in Richard should have made those tools unnecessary. The story of how a son's greed transformed his helpless mother's wedding day into his personal judgment day became legendary within legal circles, serving as both inspiration for elder protection advocates and warning for potential exploiters. The case established new precedents for prosecuting family-based elder abuse, while demonstrating that assumptions about elderly vulnerability often mask sophisticated capability and protective authority. As I sit in my quiet kitchen this morning, reviewing correspondence from grateful elderly clients and planning the Foundation's expansion into rural communities, I'm reminded that sometimes the most powerful justice comes not from destroying those who harm us, but from using our experience to protect others who might face similar threats. The son who tried to steal my independence instead gave me the perfect opportunity to strengthen elder protection for an entire community. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't personal revenge, but the prevention of others' victimization through the strategic application of wisdom, resources, and legal authority that transforms individual injustice into collective protection and community strength. Remember, respect your elders, not just because it's morally right, but because you never know when the helpless grandmother you're manipulating might actually control your entire world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.